Doctrine and Covenants 124 is the longest revelation in the Doctrine and Covenants, and is the first of a few revelations Joseph Smith received in the Illinois period to be canonized. During their time headquartered in Nauvoo, this important revelation functioned as a kind of ecclesiastical charter for the saints in governing their sacred affairs, much like the recently passed Nauvoo Charter functioned in governing their secular affairs. So here's the backstory. Much had happened since Joseph's time in Liberty Jail, from which came Doctrine and Covenants 121 through 123. In fact, it had been nearly 2 years since, on April 16, 1839, Joseph Smith and his fellow prisoners were allowed to escape from Missouri and join their fellow refugee saints then living in Quincy, Illinois. 2 weeks later, on April 30th, church leaders purchased land in and around Commerce, Illinois, for the settlement of the scattered saints. The name Commerce was later changed to Nauvoo, about which Joseph Smith explained, "The name of our city, Nauvoo, is of Hebrew origin and signifies a beautiful situation or place, carrying with it also the idea of rest." This description may have been more an expression of faith about what this area could become than what it then was, since the first saints who settled there often faced extreme sickness and even death due to the large malaria-carrying mosquito populations that infested the swampy region. Things later improved on this front, however, as the saints worked diligently to drain the swampy areas. Later that October, church leaders officially voted to designate Nauvoo as a stake and a place for the gathering of the saints. In November, Joseph and Elias Higbee traveled to Washington, D.C., and met with U.S. President Martin Van Buren to seek help and redress for the unlawful expulsion of the saints from the state of Missouri. But Van Buren said he could do nothing for them, nor, after months of effort, were they able to get any assistance from members of Congress. Joseph returned discouraged to Nauvoo in March 1840. Then later during this year of 1840, several people beloved by Joseph Smith and the saints died, including Bishop Edward Partridge, who died in May, one of Joseph's bodyguards, Seymour Brunson, who died in August, and Joseph's own father, Joseph Smith Sr., who died in September. It was actually while speaking at Seymour Brunson's funeral on August 15th that Joseph Smith announced the important practice of baptisms for the dead. And shortly thereafter, the saints began to be baptized in the Missouri River on behalf of their loved ones who had died without receiving baptism. In October, a letter from the First Presidency to the saints scattered abroad was published, in which they announced that the time had come to build a temple in Nauvoo and invited all those interested to assist in that great work to gather to Nauvoo. By the time Section 124 was received, more than 3,000 saints had gathered there, and more were arriving all the time. On December 16th, the important Nauvoo Charter was approved by the Illinois legislature, which granted the saints the right to establish a municipal court, a university, and a local militia in Nauvoo, as well as for the mayor and city councilors to be vested with executive and legislative powers. In other words, because of the Nauvoo Charter, the saints were empowered to thrive politically, educationally, and militarily. Then, on January 15, 1841, only 4 days before this revelation was given, the First Presidency published what they called a proclamation to the saints scattered abroad, the first ever proclamation issued by church leaders in the modern church era. And in this proclamation, they urged the saints to gather to Nauvoo for the carrying out the great and glorious purposes of our God, to which we have been called. Let the saints come here, they invited, assuring that this is the word of the Lord and in accordance with the great work of the last days. They continued by saying that with the protections of the Nauvoo Charter in place, we may expect a scene of peace and prosperity we have never before witnessed since the rise of our church. And the happiness and prosperity which now await us is, in all human probability, incalculably great. It was in this setting, then, of relative peace, rapid city growth, and an eager anticipation of future prosperity that Section 124 was received. It's not clear what, if any question, led to the receipt of this revelation. Joseph's history says only, "I received the following revelation." So that's the backstory.